Hello, and welcome to the Megan Taylor Creator Podcast, a show for entrepreneurs looking to grow their business with digital marketing. In this episode, I'll be sharing with you my top tips on how to boost your authority with valuable content. Let's get started. So, in this episode of the Megan Taylor Creator Podcast, I wanted to take a moment to go back to basics again. I feel like it's really important towards the end of the year when people have been working so hard on different campaigns and we're kind of reflecting on what's working and what's not. And sometimes it's a really good idea to just go back to basics and think about how much you actually understand digital marketing and how you can apply the fundamentals to making great campaigns. And the important thing to remember when it comes to making content marketing campaigns is that a lot of the tips and advice that people give, all of this is going to be irrelevant without you having some kind of authority and your website being a genuine trusted source on the internet. And that's really difficult to do, to build a place where people go to for a specific type of content. But in this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you my top tips on how to actually boost your authority and how you can do that by producing valuable content. I'm specifically going to be talking about things like the best tactics to boost your authority and also how website authority connects with SEO and how these tactics will also improve your SEO moving forward. So yeah, as always, this is probably going to be quite a long and rambly episode. So let's just get straight into it. So before we actually look at how you can boost your website authority with valuable content, it's important for us to actually understand what website authority is and what that means for your brand in the online age. And authority in the online space is super important if you want people to take your business seriously and if you want to be seen as a reliable source of information that people can go to be educated in whatever areas that they need. Without this kind of trust from an organically grown audience, you will struggle to get people to actually take your brand seriously and actually listen to your content and what it is that you have to say. And I'm still working personally on Megan Taylor Creative's brand authority, and it's a long process and I don't think it's one that ever ends. I think even big brands that we see like Forbes, for example, and in the marketing space, HubSpot, although they're definitely well-known names and trusted by the marketing community, they're known for statistics. They don't always get it right, and if they don't get it right, then that creates a kind of downfall of traction and engagement because they tarnished the trust a little bit there. And then HubSpot needs to work to rebuild that trust. So that's what I mean when authority is not something that stops. We always need to be building it. That's literally why PR teams exist and why the bigger brands and the bigger influencers nowadays, they have a PR team that they can refer to whenever there's an emergency that happens to essentially handle their image and their brand. So that's what we're doing, but on a smaller scale through content marketing. And there's lots of different ways that we can increase the authority of a website, but it's very difficult to do, especially when there's so much competition and so many people saying the same things. There's so many fluff pieces out there that are all literally just written with a purpose of being found on Google, but they're actually missing the point of creating content in the first place, which is to create an informative or entertaining piece of content that delivers something of value to the reader. And that is ultimately what Google is looking for. Okay, so we understand what authority is and why this is an important thing for your business to achieve over time. Let's actually look at how we can increase it. And as I said in the intro, a lot of the tactics that I will be sharing with you today are going to have a direct impact on your SEO, and that's what you want. You want your website to be trusted by Google so that it gets shown in SERPs, and Google wants to recommend recommend it. That's the aim. And I think a lot of people really struggle to understand what it means to create valuable SEO friendly content, because before, a lot of the time it was just about on page SEO and having keyword rich content, and the length of your content was also important. But now it really is about creating value, and also there's lots of off page and technical aspects of SEO that you need to really consider if you want to make sure that your content gets seen by your target audience. So let's get straight into those tactics. So, the first tactic that I'm going to share with you today is to focus on building your social media following and gaining mentions. And although we may kind of forget about it, social media and SEO do have a direct link with one another. And this is a part of off page SEO and something that Google monitors to ensure that people are really engaging with your content and you have the traction and the credibility around your site. Things like the number of mentions that you have, for example, Google can monitor that, and that's why in a lot of the keyword and SEO tools that you see, so for example Ahrefs or Ahrefs and like Moz and SEMrush as well, they will all be able to tell you things like how many mentions a brand has online. And that's actually particularly important for things like YouTube SEO as well. If you look at TubeBuddy, which is a keyword tool specifically built for YouTube that creators can use to help them create optimized titles and optimized descriptions and look at click-through rates as well, I think a lot of the premium tiers of TubeBuddy get a bit more advanced and help people kind of really figure out how to increase the click-through rate of a video by looking at other people's thumbnails and what videos from other creators got the most clicks and stuff like that. But one thing you will be able to see is how many social media mentions or shares, for example, a video gets. So shares, mentions, likes, this all really helps Google understand just how much people are relating to your content. And that's why it's so important to focus on building a following from the ground up, and not just a following that's solely based on metrics, a following that is actually engaged with what you have to say. And I have a relatively small following on social media. I think I'm sat at 581 followers on Twitter and 516 on Instagram, and I've kind of been building that across this year. But although it's a small audience, I actually do get quite a lot of engagement, and that's what I'm mainly focused on. I'm not actually focused on the following so much in the early days. Obviously I want more followers, but it's not a make or break thing for me, because I know the value of getting more engagement. The more engagement you get, the more you increase your reach, and the more that your content will be shown to the people in your network. So make sure that you put social media as a focus if you want not only to be exposed on those platforms, but to be exposed on Google and other search engines too. So yeah, what's going to help you is by producing consistent content that's quality content regularly, so that you can promote yourself on social media, use all the off-page SEO tactics, and also remember to consider your technical SEO too. And then eventually you'll get to the point where people will start to trust you and they'll start to listen, and search engines will also trust you. The next tip that I have to talk about is to increase your content frequency. And this is a tip that I know a lot of people roll their eyes at, or they get scared at. They either roll their eyes at because it's such an obvious tip, or they get scared at the idea of increasing their content frequency because I think, first of all, they're offended and they think, is what I'm doing not enough? But then also they realize that there's going to be even more work involved than what they're doing now. And that's really difficult to wrap your head around when you're already feel like you're doing so much. But at the end of the day, we could all be doing more marketing. And I'm not saying that you should completely sell yourself or take over your time with marketing. You need to find the right balance for you, and what the right frequency for you will look different compared to another business. So it is very tailored to your needs and also your audience's needs. The problem is that modern day audiences, they expect a high high frequency of content and they expect it to be quality content every time. So that can be quite taxing for content creators and businesses who need to actually focus on running their business, but know that they need to build a library of content that users can come to and stumble across at any time, in the hopes that they'll come across it and they'll relate to it, trust it, realize that they have a problem, and then because they trust the source of where that information has come from, they'll hopefully take action, maybe start to research the brand. And that is the whole point of content at the end of the day. It's to turn your audience into paying customers, and you do this by creating awareness, consideration, and decision stage content. But yeah, it's really difficult to find that balance, but increasing the content frequency over time will ultimately boost your chances of getting found on Google quicker, because Google will have more content to digest and understand what it is that you're all about. And also you'll be able to have more content to show on social media, and the more you can promote yourself on social media as well, the more reach you'll get over there. So there's just so many elements here, but at the end of the day, it's important to find the right frequency for you. Still, I think you need to do this sustainably if you want to see long-term growth. There's no point in posting a load of content one week and then not posting for several months, because that's also not going to be good for your business. So that's ultimately what's going to help you, is by producing consistent content that's quality content. Now that we've looked at first two tactics, which is growing your social media following and increasing your content frequency, the next important thing to look at is to build backlinks to authoritative sites within your niche. And building backlinks, it's difficult because it's another one of those things where you need to find the right balance between building a high quantity of backlinks, because you do need a certain amount of backlinks for Google to notice you and notice your brand before it recognizes that a piece of content is really good. But you also need to make sure that the backlinks you get is actually from quality sources as well. So this is where using a SEO tool comes in handy, because an SEO tool will essentially allow you to carve out a really well thought out strategy, and it will allow you to pinpoint websites that not only are, ranking for the same keywords that you want to rank for and offering the same kind of content that you are, but that actually have a high domain rating. And these SEO tools, they will have their own way of communicating what a high domain rating is, but essentially the higher the number, the better the website's domain rating is, and you'll be able to see how high their domain rating is. You'll also be able to see things like what their highest ranking content is, and also you'll be able to see, depending on what SEO tool you use, the sort of backlinks that they have, and that will also give you an indication as to which sites you should be aiming for. Hopefully, if it's a website with a really high domain rating, then chances are they've probably got backlinks from other websites that also have a really high domain rating. But then also you can look at smaller websites that still have a big impact and gather a list of those websites that maybe have more average to good scores instead of like excellent scores. Websites that have like a domain rating of 90 to 100. Those are going to be like things like Forbes and HubSpot and stuff like that all the people in their niche want to be linked to, because they know that everyone trusts them and they know that they'll get a certain amount of traffic if they manage to get a backlink from that source. So it's good to aim high, but it's also good to be realistic and think, okay, what smaller websites are out there that I can connect to and aren't going to be out of my reach to get in touch with and build a relationship with the website owner, but are still going to be valuable to me. So that's going to be important to think about. And the best way to get backlinks and to start getting backlinks is by writing guest posts. And I had a really good experience writing guest posts in the early days of Megan Taylor Creative, and it's something that I want to continue doing in the long run because I enjoy it. It allows me to leverage a lot of the journalistic training that I developed in the early days of my career and at university. So you can also get paid for writing backlinks too, which is really great depending on the website. So not only do you get that value exchange of writing a guest post and then getting a backlink, but you may also get like a little bit of extra income on top of that as well. So that's how I I would approach it. And then you can also do things like a really popular tactic is looking for broken links. And I think there's Google extensions that you can install on your Chrome browser, and it will tell you where there's broken links so that you can actually contact that site if you feel like you have a piece of content that will be a suitable replacement. The last thing I wanted to talk about, that's not really a tactic, but it's just a bit of advice, is to, when you're writing content or creating content, like multimedia content, is to think about the sources that you're taking information from and how you can include those sources in your website. External linking to other sites is actually important because it shows that you've done your research and it shows that you're engaged with the industry. So, for example, a big thing for like B2B tech companies is Gartner, and so many B2B tech companies always reference Gartner, and it's kind of a meme at this point online. So that's quite funny, but it's a good authoritative site that releases a lot of anticipated reports, and they're anticipated because there's a lot of valuable data that us marketers can use and feed into our content to back up our points. And because we're using that name, it's going to add more credibility onto what we actually have to say. And the more you actually build up your own website authority, the more you are actually going to want to link to other content on your website as well. So this is what's known as internal linking. And internal linking, you need to be very strategic when it comes to this, because you need to think about where you're linking internally, but also how it looks on the page and how it fits into the context of the content as well. And you can look at the whole EAT methodology, which is Google's way of helping SEOs and young marketers understand how to implement internal links in a way that's going to show expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, which is what EAT stands for. So I won't get too much into that in this episode because that's not exactly the point of the episode, but I will write a corresponding blog post to this podcast where I talk about EAT in a bit more detail. So yeah, that's it. That's everything. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. It was really rambly. I had so many instances where I was, struggling to get my words out, just because sometimes recording a podcast, it either goes one of two ways. You're either really into it and you can say exactly what you want and everything comes out of your head perfectly, or it's the opposite and you know what you want to say, but you can't find the right words to say, even if you plan, which I did. I was literally looking at my script at times, or not the script, like the points that I had written down to help me ensure that all the points were tied up nicely together, and I still couldn't get my points out for some of them. And I just wanted to make a point of that because I know a lot of people who maybe listen to this podcast think that I can just say, now that I've been doing this for 20 plus episodes, I can say with no hesitation what I want to say, and that's just not true. I would be really interested to actually do a podcast episode about how to create a podcast and like a corresponding blog post too. If that is something that you're interested in, do let me know. And please let me know if there are any other topics as well. We're getting into the end of the year now, so I'll be looking at what the podcast looks like into the new year as we get further into the podcast's history. So yeah, as always, thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, please like the video on YouTube and subscribe to our channel so that you can be made aware every time a new episode is made available. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Bye!